In this discussion, we're going to cover the historical context of Neo-Vedanta. The influence of the Islamic Mughal Empire on the South Asian subcontinent was gradually replaced, as we know, by that of the East India Company during a period of violent conflict between company figures, expanding company rule, and the remnants of the Mughal Empire itself. Prior to the establishment of company rule, Mughal rule, especially in northern India, had a period of contestation where Hindu communities split between being loyal and against the Mughals, Buddhist communities as well. And this led, in some cases, to various acts of imperial persecution. While South Asian society was greatly impacted by Mughal rule, including the funding of temples, especially Hindu temples, and the construction of mosques and formation of educational institutions. The Mughal economy continued to remain the largest in the world during the early period of company rule, thanks in large part to its proto or early industrialization. Muslim rule in the southern subcontinent, however, was relatively short-lived, being only established by the 17th century. The policies of the East India Company coincided with the decline of this sort of proto or early industrialization in former Mughal territories and the expanding economies of a global industrialization, including Manchester and Northern Africa and parts of Eastern Asia and parts of the Americas. The economic decline in the southern subcontinent especially was in part due to restrictive company policies in their Indian territories, and also this emergence of this more global industrial revolution, as well as the eventual dismantlement of the education systems that the Mughals had built up by the tail end of the 18th century. The new education system drafted by the East India Company emphasized especially European culture redrafted as quote-unquote Western culture at the expense of South Asian cultures. And so it was very white supremacist in this construction. The East India Company was also involved in supporting the activities of Protestant missionaries in India, particularly after 1813. Now keep in mind that there were pre-existing Catholic communities, especially in Goa, and there were actually Indian Christian communities, albeit small, from periods preceding European interaction. These missionaries, however, the new Protestant missionaries, frequently expressed vehemently anti-Muslim and vehemently anti-Hindu sentiments in line with what they argued was a Christian way of thinking. In response to company rule in South Asia and the method of education systems that argued Western culture was dominant, again, within quotes, of course, Western culture was not actually dominant. The debate about whether or not Western culture even exists or ever existed as such is another debate. But nonetheless, these education systems were portraying it as Western culture as dominant. This led to a response from Hindu reform movements, which propagated societal and religious reforms, exemplifying what the scholar Percival Speer has called the, quote, solution of synthesis, in an effort to adapt newcomers and also a process of innovation and amalgamation, gradually blending together both Hindu and Muslim elements. The so-called Neo-Vedanta or Neo-Vedanta, also called Neo-Hinduism, is a central theme these reform movements. The earliest, of course, would be that of Ram Mohan Roy's Brahmo Samaj, which strived toward a purified and monotheistic interpretation of Hinduism, leading towards the development of a new religion called Brahmoism. The Brahmo Samaj is the school or the societal component of Brahmoism, which is a religious strain of thought. So or even arguably a syncretic religion, or possibly an independent religion that is syncretic, kind of comparable to Sikhism. But most scholars lump it under Hinduism or a form of reform Hinduism at present. Brahmoism began as a monotheistic reform movement of the Hindu religion that appeared during the Bengali Renaissance. It was one of the most influential religious movements in South Asia, making it one of the most significant contributions to the making of modern India and modern Bengal, and also one of the most influential religious movements in the world in the 20th century. It was started in the 19th century at Calcutta on August 20th in 1828 by Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Devendranath Tagore as a reformation of the prevailing Brahmanism of the time, specifically Kulin practices. And it began the Bengali Renaissance and began to sort of spur on this Bengali Renaissance. It's part of the Bengali Renaissance, which is a 19th century movement pioneering all religious, social, and educational advances of the Bengali communities. The Brahmo Samaj's trust deed was made in 1830, formalizing its inception, and it was duly and publicly inaugurated in January of 1830 by the consecration of the first house of prayer, now known as the Adi Brahmo Samaj. From the Brahmo Samaj, there would eventually emerge this Brahmoism, the most recent of legally recognized religions in India and Bangladesh, reflecting a foundation of reformed spiritual Hinduism with vital elements incorporated from Judaism and also Islamic practice. Brahmoism is practiced today mainly as the Adi Dharma, after its eclipse in Bengal and subsequent exit of Tattva Bodhini Sabha from its ranks in 1839. After the publication of Hamindranath Tagore's Brahmo Anustan, the Code of Practice in 1860, there was a sort of formal divorce between Brahmoism and Hinduism, which resulted in the first Brahmo Samaj institution being founded in 1861 at Lahore by Pandit Nobin Chandra Roy. Now you may have noticed two key family names in this Bengali Renaissance, the Roys and the Tagores. So the Roys are not all related, and the Tagores are not all related, but several Roys are and several Tagores are related. So let's just keep this in mind. We're mostly speaking of Brahmanist class individuals. So Rajaham Mohan Roy was one of the founders of the Brahmo Sambha, a precursor to the Brahmo Samaj, a societal religious reform movement in the Indian subcontinent. He was given the title of Raja by Akbar II, the Mughal emperor. His influence was apparent in the fields of politics, political administration, education, and, of course, religion. He was also known for his efforts to abolish the practices of sati, or a voluntary ritual self-immolation of spouses, female spouses, on a funeral pyre in order to secure the inheritance, the lines of inheritance of their children. And he also opposed, most notably, child marriage. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is considered to be the father of the Bengali Renaissance by many historians. In 2004, Roy was ranked number 10 in BBC India's poll of the greatest Bengalis of all time also. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is portrayed here on the right-hand side in a 1964 sort of commemorative stamp, but the religious reforms of Roy contain some beliefs of the Brahmo Samaj expounded by Rajnarayan Basu, which are the Brahmo Samaj believe the most fundamental sort of practices of Brahmoism are the basis of every religion followed by humans. They also believe that the Brahmo Samaj is that they're asserts that there's one existence of a singular supreme God. This is very parallel to Islamic notions of Allah. So a God endowed with distinct personality and moral attributes equal to his nature and intelligence, befitting the author and preserver of the universe. Now, you'll note that the author and preserver of the universe there is also somewhat similar to author of the universe being somewhat similar to Allah, and preserver of the universe being somewhat similar to Vishnu, so blending those concepts. And they also assert that they will worship him alone, so that's sort of similar to common Islamic notions of practice. The Brahmo Samaj believe that worship of him needs no fixed place or time. We can, quote, adore him at any time or place, provided that time and place are calculated to compose and direct the mind towards him. So this would be similar to Hindu practices in terms of veneration. Having studied the Quran, the Vedas, and the Upanishads, Raja Ram Mohan Roy's beliefs were derived from a combination monastic elements of Hinduism, Islam, 18th century deism, some sort of notions of Unitarianism or Universalism that were blended in there. He also incorporated ideas from the Freemasons, but really strongly emphasized the Tanakh, or sort of what most folks who are Christian would probably call the Jewish Bible, but the Tanakh being early Jewish scriptures there. So pre-Islamic scriptures, what's called Israelat in Islamic conceptions of literature. He also propounded social reforms, as I previously mentioned. He founded the Atmiya Sabha and the Unitarian Community to fight all social evils, and to propagate social and educational reforms in India. India, within quotes here, includes Pakistan and Bengal today as part of sort of British India. He was an individual who fought against superstitions as well, so a modernist reformer in that sense, and a pioneer of education in that he asserted polyglot skills were important, so studying multiple languages. He was also a trendsetter in asserting that there should be the preponderance of writing in Bengali prose and support of Indian presses. He crusaded against certain Hindu customs such as sati, polygamy, child marriage, and the caste system. Raja Ram Mohan Roy's ideas were altered considerably by Debendranath Tagore, who's pictured on the right here, who had a sort of romantic approach to the development of these certain beliefs and questioned central Hindu beliefs like reincarnation and karma, rejecting the authority of the Vedas. Tagore also brought this neo-Hinduism closer in line with British colonialist expectations of esotericism, a development which was furthered by Keshub Chandra Sen, pictured on the left. Debendranath Tagore was a Hindu philosopher and religious reformer active in the Brahmo Samaj. He was the founder of the 1848 Brahmo religion, Brahmoism. He was born in Shalai and was the father of the industrialist Dwarkanath Tagore. He was also, he himself had 14 children, many of whom, including Nobel Prize winning Rabindranath Tagore, made significant artistic and literary contributions to society. Keshub Chandra Sen was a Hindu philosopher and social reformer who attempted to incorporate really explicitly Christian theology within the framework of Hindu thought because he thought that this would be a play to the British. Born in a Hindu Bengali presidency of British India, he became a member of the Brahmo Samaj at first, but established his own breakaway group, the Bharat Varshiya Brahmo Samaj, in 1866, which the Brahmo Samaj leadership under Debendranath Tagore rejected as playing too much into the colonialists' hands. In 1878, his followers abandoned him after an underage child marriage of his daughter exposed his campaign against child marriage as hypocritical and hollow.